Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael Drake, President, The Ohio State University, and Chair of the APLU Council of Presidents.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here to open this part of our coming together. The theme of our conference is discovery, learning, and engagement, and I think we've had a variety of topics to talk about. It's a very exciting time in the country and in higher education, and I think our coming together during these exciting times is very, very important for us to be able to share ideas, to share best practices, and in many ways to share real-time information on what's happening on our campuses so that we can go back home and try to put into practice those things that our colleagues are using to help us deal with these ever-changing challenges that we have. And such a great privilege to be involved with APLU to be able to address these things. Our speaker this afternoon is someone who is no stranger to challenges of many types, and he had a wonderful career after being a graduate of the University of Texas, Austin. He had a distinguished career in the U.S. military, rising to the position of Admiral, and then became the Chancellor, the lone finalist actually for the Chancellorship in the summer of 2014, and took on the position of Chancellor of the University of Texas System in January of 2015. As I said, no stranger to changing circumstances and adaptability and working with large, complex organizations. He's brought a fresh perspective to the University of Texas Chancellorship, and we're very pleased to have Admiral William Mcraven here today to speak to us. Thank you. Admiral Mcraven.
And actually, you'll be happy to know that I'm just the warm-up here to welcome you to Austin before you actually begin lunch. So first, I know you have been welcomed to Austin a number of times, but let me take the opportunity once again to say welcome. This is a fabulous city. I think you're going to enjoy it if you haven't had a chance to get out and walk the streets. Second, on behalf of the University of Texas System, I really do want to thank the APLU for the great work that it does in advocating on behalf of higher education. We're really honored to count many of our institutions as members, and there are a number of our presidents here today. And frankly, to have had a number of UT presidents serve on the APLU board. Third, I want to thank all of you for the roles you play helping make American universities the envy of the world. As Michael said, I spent 37 years in the military, and one of the things that kept me there so long, frankly, was my unshakable belief in the mission. A mission that I believed was worthy of every single ounce of effort I had. And what a blessing it's been to find a second career, a second mission that is every bit as noble. To have the opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with great faculty, researchers, administrators, and students, that's what gets me up every single day, and I know that's the same for all of you out there. And it's great to have had an opportunity to come back to Austin. I just saw Judy Ginshaft here at USF, and I spent my last couple of years in Tampa, Florida. What a great, great city Tampa is. Florida has been always very, very welcoming to the military. But Judy, as you can appreciate, at that point in my life and my career, I felt it was time to come home. And I will tell you, as I left Austin in 1977, went away for about 37 years, and then showed back up here again in late 2014. Austin has changed a little bit. It has, however, become incredibly dynamic. It's an incredibly dynamic city of music, of technology, of innovation, in addition to being the seat of the state government and, of course, the home to our flagship institution, the University of Texas at Austin. You look back, Michael Dell built his first computer in a dorm room here at UT, igniting this tech boom that is still going strong. South by Southwest, which I don't even think existed when I was a student here, has grown from a small music festival into a global cultural phenomenon. In a town whose top 3 sports priorities used to be football, football, and football. Okay, actually those priorities really haven't changed. But we now have Formula One racing, a seemingly odd fit for Austin, but still draws tens of thousands of visitors from around the world. And I'm sure you've noticed the cranes. The state bird of Texas is the crane. This is one of the constant, fastest changing cities in the state of Texas. And the skyline today bears absolutely no resemblance to what it looked like the years I was here. Now, it's not all good news. I must say, traffic, as you've probably experienced, has gotten a lot worse, and that can take a toll. And yet the spirit I remember from the late 70s, the creativity, the open-mindedness is still here in great, great abundance. I do hope you have a chance to get out and explore a bit. I'm sure you have all become familiar with the city's motto, "Keep Austin Weird." And I can attest, as someone who works in the heart of the city, there are plenty of people who are doing their part to make that happen. But I think you'll also find that this is an incredibly friendly city and really does embrace visitors. One thing that I hope never changes, and I don't think it will, is the very close relationship between the University of Texas at Austin and the city of Austin. They really have grown up together, so much so that it's hard to think of one without the other. To me, it's a good reminder of the impact of the work that all of you do. Universities are economic engines. They are cultural powerhouses. They are conveners, bringing people of all points of view together to discuss, debate, and argue the issues of the day. And very importantly, they provide a rallying point for the community. And I know the same goes for the communities you and your universities call home. But of course, none of this happens. None of this happens without your great leadership. So as I welcome you, I want to thank you for providing that leadership. For the work you do could not be more important. You have all been blessed with a great mission and a great opportunity to make a difference. I know you will continue to make the most of that opportunity. So again, thank you for being here. I want to note that after lunch is served, we will hear from our keynote speaker, Peter Pharisee, the Vice President, General Manager of Amazon Market. Please enjoy your meal.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome June Youatt, Provost of Michigan State University.
Good afternoon. Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Peter Pharisee, who is the product of some of our great public institutions. Peter did his undergraduate work with us at Michigan State University in business administration, and then went on to earn an MBA with distinction at the University of Michigan. He left Michigan and joined Borders and Ford Motor Company, worked with McKinsey, but has found his real home at Amazon. Before his current role as Vice President for Amazon Marketplace, he was Vice President of Music and Movies, which actually sounded like a pretty good job to me. But since 2009 has been responsible for actually, he and his team creating the end-to-end experience for third-party sellers for Amazon Marketplace. And as I think all of you know, that's resulted in just an unprecedented growth, where at a few years ago it was about 30% of the units sold to now about half. He and his team really have created the technology and the systems, the innovation that delivers the best results for both customers and sellers. And it is our great pleasure today to welcome Peter Pharisee.
Thank you very much. It's so great to be here in Austin, and I've never been to Austin, and I've always wanted to come to Austin, so this is a great opportunity to do that. Really want to thank June for that warm welcome, but also President McPherson, the APLU board, and all of you for the great work you do. As I think back at my lifetime, it was often my time on university campus where I find the biggest uptick in my curiosity and my happiness and fun. And so I feel like I'm back on campus, even though we're here in a ballroom here in Austin. So thank all of you for being here. My university story at Michigan State is a bit of a love story. It's literally a love story because I met my wife Sharon my junior year. We were both in the marketing association. And we met and fell in love, and I'm happy to say have 4 wonderful children. And much to our surprise, we've begun the university process all over again, which many of you, I guess, live each day. But we spent a lot of the last 5 years visiting university campuses and sitting through all of the great tours, and it really is fun. It's quite energizing to be there. We have our oldest son, Ben, is a junior at University of Michigan. We have a daughter, Megan, who's a freshman at Boston College. And so I feel like I'm part of a college campus every day of my life as I keep in touch with both of them. And we have a couple more coming, one in high school and one in 7th grade. So we're looking forward to that. What I thought I would do is tell you a little bit about the experience I have with universities, but maybe more relevant, the experience I have at Amazon, and see whether or not any of that experience would be fun for us to think about as we think about the future of higher education. As I go on in my career, I'm trying to spend more time focused on things that I really do love. So the time I've been at Amazon, I'm the executive sponsor for recruiting at a couple of the schools we just talked about. I'm on the President's Campaign Committee at Michigan State and the Ross School of Business at Michigan. I'm on the board of directors there. And so I do get to spend a lot of time with students and faculty and staff in addition to the wonderful role I have at Amazon. And part of why I think the worlds are tied together is that we really need each other. I think as I look forward in Amazon, you know, we do occasionally figure out, like, are there real constraints for stuff like steel? You know, are there enough airplanes in the world? We do think about stuff like that. But really, what it always comes down to is there enough human capital? Are there enough graduating students? Is there enough really great talent throughout the world to kind of continue to keep these great ideas we have nurtured and put into action? And so that's where I spend a lot of my time thinking about, do we have enough talent? As part of the challenge today, it's one thing I should tell you up front is other than an MBA, I don't have any advanced degrees. So I'm probably the least qualified speaker you've had this week. And I'm not an academic by any means, and I haven't studied higher education. So my goal today is to kind of push your thinking on, here are some gaps I see from the perspective of a father of a couple of students and someone who does a lot of hiring at university. And is there anything we can learn by following these entrepreneurs that I get to work with every day? So with that in mind, let me tell you a little bit about the Amazon marketplace. First of all, how many Amazon Prime customers in here? Can I just get a quick show of hands? Okay, let me try the reverse. And I am keeping track. Is there anyone here who has not yet heard of Amazon Prime and signed up for Amazon Prime? I got a couple of them back there. I'd like to find out the name of the university, please. And please see me afterwards. The Amazon Prime program is wonderful, and the business I lead, the Amazon Marketplace, is really fun. I think you guys would like it a lot. It's a very inspirational group of small and medium businesses and entrepreneurs from all over the world who sell their products on Amazon. And as the Admiral mentioned, every once in a while you get lucky and someone like a Michael Dell builds a company like Dell down here in Austin, or Bill Gates establishes Microsoft in Seattle, where I work. But for most of the world's economy, it's really these small, medium, micro businesses and entrepreneurs that decide the health of the economy. And if you were really elected to office and you really wanted to make sure the health of your country's economy was going to be successful, the number one priority I think you'd want to look at is what's the health of new businesses and entrepreneurs. And one of the interesting things to me is actually in the US, the rate of entrepreneurialism has been on the decline since the 50s. In fact, we kind of bottomed out in the early 2000s, and hopefully that's going to rebound a little bit with the advent of e-commerce. But one of the things that makes the Amazon Marketplace unique is that we've removed a lot of the barriers for an entrepreneur to be successful. And so for the first time in history, you can go right from having a great idea to reach hundreds of millions of customers directly. It's really, really incredible. And there's not really a good case study that I've ever seen in business school that kind of describes this opportunity. And one of my favorite stories is for those of you who work out in the gym, if you're familiar with these fitness bands, TRX bands, you guys ever, even if you don't work out with them, but you've seen some stuff hanging and you're like, what is that exactly? And why would someone do a row or something and hang on those? Well, it's a really cool story. It was actually a Navy SEAL, and as part of his travel with the Navy, they couldn't actually bring weights with them. It was too heavy for the load. And so he literally invented this same TRX system using the cargo straps of the essential cargo they needed as they traveled throughout the world as a Navy SEAL. and started his own idea, started his business, and actually started his business on Amazon, and now sells hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products all over the world. And so there's many, many inspirational stories of entrepreneurs like this. And so I feel blessed to wake up every day with thousands of people on my team kind of thinking about the life of an entrepreneur. So my thesis today is really around, I think overall it's a great time to be a college student. You guys know better than I do, but from all the data I've seen, the number of jobs available is growing dramatically. I saw this Georgetown study that said 25 million jobs are going to be added by 2020. The current U.S. employment rate for 25-year-olds with a college degree is 2.5%, much lower than our overall unemployment rate across the U.S. But I think the crisis that's brewing is really two pieces. One, we don't have enough graduates in the critical areas of computer science and mathematics. I'll name two, selfishly for Amazon. But I probably could add to that engineering, other technology areas. But there's a big gap. I've seen the gap estimated to be between 1 million and 2.5 million jobs that are going to be open over the next 3 years. And I think, that becomes very, very difficult to imagine how will we continue to grow and how will entrepreneurs continue to grow without enough technology graduates. I think there's also some evidence that I'll get to in just a minute that the students that are graduating aren't quite as prepared for the new world as I think you want them to be and we want them to be. And I'm going to try to come up with some ideas of how I think we can address that. On the Amazon side, just to kind of give you a feel, we currently have, I'm not making up this number, as of the end of October, 20,000 open roles that we can't fill, just here in the US, 20,000. About 60% of them are technology, another third are business, and the rest are operations and support. But we're seeing this bigger and bigger gap of not being able to fill the roles that are so essential, not just for high-tech companies, but I think for many of the big growing parts of the world. I also want to add, and I think many of you will appreciate this, I think in addition to the gap of the number of graduates, there's really a growing gap in diversity of candidates as well. And all of the data I've seen, not just about technology, but on graduates in general who are qualified for the roles we hire for, is we aren't producing enough qualified women in these industries and in these roles. And the number of tech graduates, I just saw this number recently, has decreased from 37% down to 24% on a path to go to 22 or 20 over the next 10 years. And so I think for all of us, I kind of feel like the alarm bell is ringing. It's a wake-up call, and it's time for us to figure out how to address it. I think the story is a little bit more complex because the needs of businesses is also getting more complex. We're looking for a profile that sounds more and more unicornish. We're looking for computer science graduates who can run large operations team. We're looking for business graduates who understand mathematics well. We're looking for engineers who can also lead new products we want to launch on Amazon. And so it's really with gratefulness and amazement that I say thank you to all of you for the great work you do, because it is very hard to think of how do we accomplish all of that in 4 years. But I guess the piece of my thesis that I feel most clear on is the model today is working pretty well for higher education institutions, but I just don't think it's working well enough for graduates and for the companies that hire them. And I wonder if there's more that we could be or should be doing together. There was a McKinsey study that I saw that came out in 2013 that I thought best exemplified this. It said that a survey of higher education leaders, 75% of educators felt like the students were well prepared for their jobs post-graduation. That same McKinsey study surveyed the companies and the students only about 40% felt like they were well prepared, and the companies felt about the same. About 42% were well prepared. And so I think there is an opportunity for us to figure out how do we have more students in these areas and how do we help them prepare more. I would say within Amazon, some of the areas that are the most difficult are things that I feel like are in a university's wheelhouse to help them be quite successful. So, for example, we require, I don't know if you know this or not, in order to work at Amazon, for most of our full-time roles, we actually require a writing sample. And so for those of you who've always believed that written communication skills, being able to organize your thoughts, structure your thinking, and use writing and verbal communication are essential, we're with you. We think it's totally essential, and in fact, it's a requirement in order to get a job at Amazon. But there's also areas like handling ambiguity, I guess sort of by definition of handling ambiguity, that are difficult to address, and I don't think many students feel well prepared to tackle things that aren't well structured and aren't already laid out in a very clear format. Part of the reason ambiguity is important at Amazon is that a lot of the things that we're trying to solve don't have a playbook. A lot of the problems that we're trying to solve require you to take something that is very ambiguous and put a structure around it and sort out what is the question we're trying to solve, and how do we continue to iterate and go back and forth until we're clearer and clearer on what problem we're trying to solve. So with that in mind, I'm going to make 4 humble suggestions, if you don't mind, of things that I think I've learned from entrepreneurs that I wonder if they apply to higher education. And I make them for both of us. I really feel like it's the joint venture between higher education and the corporate world that can address a lot of these issues. And the very first one is going to sound a little bit counterintuitive, so I may need a minute to explain it, but I would like to see a lot more failure on campus. And when I say failure, I think that's kind of the opposite of what most people want when they go to school. And I think a lot of the reason that failure is a bad word is that failure today is most often defined as failing a class, getting a failing GPA, and that's really not the kind of failure that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind of failure where we create an environment where people are encouraged to take chances, to experiment, and we know, and they know, there's a high chance of failure. And this is exactly what entrepreneurs do. And you guys may know, there's actually a great quote that Jeff Bezos had. I think he called inseparable twins this concept of innovation and failure. If you really want to be inventive, you have to also be willing to embrace failure as part of that process. And as many of you know, with entrepreneurs, they would love to have a success rate of 10%. And most entrepreneurs have a success rate that's much below 10%. And so it kind of got me to thinking about how would campuses really embrace this concept of failing? And how do we get more and more practice at failing during the campus time so that by the time the students hit the ground running post-graduation, they've already failed a lot. And they've already figured out that it's okay to fail, and maybe the most important lesson in life is to figure out what you learn from failure. And so would schools start keeping track of how many failures the school had this past year? How many experiments did we try, and how many of those didn't succeed? It'd be kind of crazy. I don't think many schools are necessarily ready for a path of failure. But one of the things we've tried to do at Amazon is we've tried to create a different kind of a culture where it's okay to fail. And a lot of the innovations that you may love about Amazon, whether it be Amazon Prime or fast delivery speeds or maybe new product categories, most of those are the benefit of many, many, many failures we've had over the years. The business that I lead, called the Amazon Marketplace, we've actually had 2 major failures. We had an auction site, and we had a business called Z-Shops. Massive failures. We spent years working on them, and nobody came. But we learned so much from those failures, we were able to really turn this into this much more wonderful Amazon Marketplace business we have today. So my first suggestion is, how do we create more opportunities on campus to fail, and how do we really embrace cultures where it's okay for students to fail, and in fact, we encourage it as part of the education process. My second suggestion is, where should universities begin to fill some of the gaps that exist today? If these gaps exist with graduates in computer science and mathematics, if the gaps exist on the skill set that students need, how would universities fill that gap set? And I wanted to share with you a quick story that I think has sort of been misunderstood in the popular press. I don't know how many of you saw this, but earlier this year, Amazon leased, I think it was either 10 or 20, forgive me for getting the number wrong, Boeing jets. Anybody see that? And we launched a new delivery service in the UK called AMZL, where we're actually doing local last mile deliveries. And I've seen a bunch of articles kind of suggesting that the reason Amazon must be doing that is because they now want to compete with Federal Express or UPS or the Postal Service. And the funny thing is, they couldn't have the story more wrong. Really, the reason we're getting involved in product fulfillment is that during the holiday season, there isn't enough capacity in the United States for the existing carriers to deliver all the packages. It's as simple as that. And so if you want to get your packages in time for whatever holiday you celebrate, we have to get involved. And in fact, it would be a great barrier and a great limiter for our customers at the time that they want us to be on time the most during this holiday season, not to have that in place. And so at Amazon, we often think about, when you're forced to deal with something difficult, like we had a couple of holiday seasons where we were on the edge of not being able to deliver all the packages we needed to for the holiday season. The question at some point is, how do you not get mad at the carriers? That isn't very productive. The question really becomes, what is it that we're going to do to take responsibility for this and figure out a new solution? So when it comes to, do we have enough technology grads, what is it that universities could do to incent and create a path for many, many more technology grads? And one of the things I notice across all the schools that I have visited is that computer science is usually kind of a separate school. It's a separate discipline. It's a separate track. There's very little integration of something like computer science into the core curriculum. And it's almost kind of treated like either you're kind of a techie and you're an engineer, or you're not. And if you're not, you don't need to participate in computer science. And really, if you were to spend a day with me in Amazon, you'd find that, computer science, and I don't have a computer science degree at all, but it's integrated into almost every single moment of my day across Amazon. And I think that's where the world's headed. I think if you take a look at medicine, if you take a look at science, if you take a look at business, this integration of computer science is essential. And so what are universities going to do to address that gap? Okay, my third idea or suggestion is, I guess, related to Amazon Prime. And again, I guess I'll quote Jeff Bezos. He had a really great quote that I loved earlier this year. He said, "We want Prime to be such a good value, you'd be irresponsible not to be a member." And so thank you all for being members, I should say, by the way. But it's not meant to be one of those statements about judging people. It's really meant to be more of kind of a fiery mission that we're on within Amazon. We're on this relentless pace every day, every week, every month to figure out a way to make the Prime program better. And so I wonder if there's an analogy here for universities, because part of what I feel like happens at a university is that you're very, very engaged during your time on campus, and then you're very not that engaged after you leave campus for most students. And I think, there's many wonderful alumni associations. I've joined them. I think they do their best to send magazines. I know I get a car discount at Avis if I ever take advantage of it. But I think there's something more that we may be missing. And I wondered if you thought of joining a university and getting your degree as more of a lifelong program, like Prime, if we would think of different ideas. One interesting that happens a lot is I get a lot of calls from people who are mid-career and looking for a change. And I do my best to take the call, and I do my best to make suggestions, but I kind of feel bad for them because they're really not served by anybody as far as I can tell. They can't really go back on campus. The placement services and the classes are really more focused on the current students on campus. And if you walk back and you're in mid-career, you probably feel like, this is a place that's not meant for me anymore. And then there's not really a place in the outplacement world that advises you and helps you think about new curriculum and new courses. One of the things I've had to learn on the fly over the past 5 years at Amazon has been the enormous value of machine learning. And we launched a business on my team about 4 years ago called Amazon Lending. And in our letter to shareholders this past year, we talked about this, but we've actually loaned billions of dollars to small, medium businesses and micro businesses all over the world. I'm totally unqualified to be a banker. I have nothing in my educational background or my experience that makes me a banker. But on the other hand, we've built a great program that's really very customer-centric and really thinks about the lifetime of an entrepreneur. And so my goal with entrepreneurs isn't just to keep their business on Amazon, take their business, and then have some natural attrition. My goal is to continue to think about the life cycle and the lifetime of an entrepreneur. And many of them, as they begin to get successful, need capital. And so one of the reasons we built something so odd, Amazon Lending, was really because we were trying to fill a gap. And I wonder again, if there's some way to make education continue to be the greatest value of the world. I really do agree with the Admiral's comments. I think today, as I travel around the world, and I travel a fair amount, everybody would love to come here for their education. There's no question about that. And I think my push and my plea and my suggestion is really more, how do we take this rich and wonderful experience that all of you provide, and how would we extend that for the lifetime of the people who are part of your campus? One of the things I can tell you that is hard, because I'm on the capital campaign for both Michigan and Michigan State out in Seattle, is if you haven't kept in touch with someone for 20 or 30 years and your first call is about the capital campaign, it's a tougher sell. And a few of you are laughing, but don't think that isn't the first call for many of the graduates. And the business development people are wonderful. They're used to these conversations. They're anticipating it. But boy, would they love to have a conversation with someone who's been more engaged with the university throughout the whole time. And then my fourth and final suggestion is one, I guess, to tie some of these together, which is that a lot of what we try to do at Amazon is figure out how do we plant seeds of growth. In our letter to shareholders this year, Amazon became the fastest company in history to get to $100 billion, and we also announced that AWS, Amazon Web Services, beat Amazon to get to $10 billion faster. And what's interesting is that both of those and many other businesses that I've launched on my team, they all started as small seeds of growth. And I'll tell you another story that's kind of a cute story, but we had a college grad join Amazon, and about 6 months after he joined, he sent 50 VPs an email about a new business that he thought we should launch. And he wrote up a business plan and sent 50 of us this email. And I'm sorry to say, 48 people didn't respond. They were probably like, who's the new junior guy sending us a note about a new business? We got a lot of important stuff going on. That's so nice. But 2 of us were crazy enough to respond, and I was one of them. And so I invited this guy over, and I had coffee with him, and sure enough, it was an amazing idea. It was a really, really great seed to plant. And so I tried to do something to try to be a role model of this within my own company, which is that I immediately said to him, here's the story. If you're willing to move over to my team and take on this idea and launch it next year, I will give you 9 more people. You've got yourself plus 9, 10 people total, and you've got a year to prove that this thing has some interest with consumers. And if we get signals from consumers that this thing is a winner, we'll fund you. We'll fund you, and we'll continue to fund you, much like a venture capital fund, and we'll make a very, very big deal out of this business. So stay tuned, because we're going to launch something in the first quarter of next year that I think is going to be super fun. It's very, very customer-oriented, and if you're tired of traffic problems and parking problems, we've got some fun ideas for you that we'll try and see if they meet your needs. But maybe the meta point for universities is, how do we create more and more venture capital funds within universities? I read this story the other day, and I'm a very big college football fan. I'm a very big college basketball fan. But I read the story the other day of a university that was able to pivot on a dime to create an endowment fund to retain their defensive coordinator. It was admirable. It was amazing. I mean, I think it happened over a weekend, and they did an amazing job of it. But the thing I worry about is, there's plenty of good defensive coordinators out there, as far as I can tell. Maybe some of you would like to have a few more. But in general, there's a lot of good defensive coordinators. What I want to know is, how fast are we pivoting when faculty and staff and students have a good idea? And are you telling them, that's such a good idea, I'm going to give you the research funding you need, I'm going to give you the resources you need, and I'm willing to have your back for a year whether or not this thing is successful or not successful. And I think that's kind of the ultimate test as to whether we really have the kind of innovation and the kind of entrepreneurial environment we need on all these campuses. Now, I do want to close by saying I do feel like this is quite the joint venture. Absolutely, companies like Amazon and corporations have a big responsibility here, and I see that. We are trying to do a lot to give back. The Amazon Web Services business I mentioned has a very close partnership, and they've actually put together AWS Educate Global Initiative to give a lot of their time and resources to educators and to students so that they can be trained on Amazon Web Services and web services and cloud computing for years to come. I try to invest with my teams most of our time on campus, not on the selfish goal of recruiting, but really on figuring out ways to give back to students, because I do think it's really incumbent upon companies like Amazon to hire a lot of summer interns, to do a lot of case competitions, to spend a lot of time helping students interview and polish their skills. For the past couple of years, I've actually taught an hour-and-a-half session, believe it or not, on just writing, just on how to organize and structure your thoughts and how to define problems and how to go solve problems. And I do think it's very important for companies to be able to do that. So I'll close by saying, again, that I'm grateful for the big mission that all of you were on. In many ways, your mission is something that all of us in the corporate world are not only grateful for, but we really admire the amazing things you've done. And I wonder if, as we look down the road and we look forward, if we can't learn a lot from these same entrepreneurs that I get to work with every day, and how do we take the lessons from these entrepreneurs and apply them to all of our students and to create lots of happy alumni and many beyond. Thank you for your kind paying attention and participation. Very nice to meet all of you today.